Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I am married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell. So you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need.
Oh, yeah. I know. That's exactly the question. It's always about change, and you have to really want it. You know, this sex addiction in so many ways affects men, women, partners, families, and certainly couples. So if you are with somebody and you have been through partner betrayal, you may wonder what you can do to fix, alter, support, relieve, this terrible condition. And there's no doubt that when a partner experiences sexual betrayal, she doesn't know where to turn. First thing I would tell you is go to somebody who understands your addiction, somebody who specializes in sex addiction. There are many different organizations that do that. You know that I'm part of an organization that certifies us to treat sexual addiction. That's a CSAT. And you can go to sexhelp.com and find a CSAT in your area. And I would especially work with somebody who had partner trauma training. And that may be somebody who has both, like myself. Now, the ITAPers who certify sex addiction, they are now creating a partner training program that they've had running for a couple of years, and that's always helpful. And then again, you can go to apsats.org, that's APSATS.org, and you can seek a partner-sensitive therapist or coach for your wife. And last but not least, what do you do when you're ready to work on the coupleship? And you know that normal couples therapy doesn't work. You really should do something I call early couples recovery work. And that's with somebody who knows what to do. Well, you can always reach out to either one of these organizations and find out who's good. But how do you get extra support for your relationship? What if you both really want to heal, but you know you need more support? Well, we're going to be talking today to Gary and Donna, who are participating in a 12-step recovery group that has really helped them to solidify their relationship and to work through the wounds. And so Gary and Donna, I am so happy to have you on the show today because there's just not enough support for couples. Don't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely not enough support for couples. And it's always like working one side of the street and the other person working the other side, and there's no in-between quite frequently.
Yeah, I would agree, Carol.
Well, you brought up something that is prevalent in 12-step groups, and that is that belief that if you're a drug, alcohol, sex addict, you should probably do your work first, and then she needs to be doing her work, and maybe you come together a couple of years later. Now, does your group, RCA, does that subscribe to the same timeline, if you will?
No, I don't think it does. For the coupleship to survive, I think you need it. You'll starve it to death if you don't do anything for it. So you've got to make some inroads, even if they're small, to keep the coupleship alive. And I know both people are working on their individual recovery, but the ideal is like a three-legged stool where each person has to work on their recovery, and then there needs to be recovery work for the coupleship at the same time for the coupleship to survive.
Right. So,
Okay.
Carol, one of the things that we find that Gary and I have found is this misunderstanding or lack of knowledge of even how the coupleship behaves just in general, and then add on the challenge of sexual betrayal. And already the coupleship is now at below zero, And now how do we even get out of this mess, right? How do we talk to each other again? And there's this lack of intimacy, being sexual necessarily, but I'm talking about just being vulnerable and transparent with each other. And what we found is just working with our group, working through the steps like we did, Gary and I got to know each other, after 20 years of marriage, and then the betrayal happened. We still didn't even understand each other. We still didn't even know each other, honestly. And so what using the program did for us was actually allow us to learn how to understand each other's backgrounds, the trauma that each one of us had, at least in our story. And it started opening up that it was okay to speak about things that were really hard, really painful, and begin to bridge that gap between us.
Okay, and so can you give us just a little bit of your history in terms of, you just told us how long you've been married, but at what point did you start RCA?
You want to kind of
It'll be 4 years ago next month. So we started actually because of a lapse I had, and I was trying to look at, to help Donna feel safe, some action I had to take to show I was still committed to the relationship. And I was looking at a Patrick Carnes book, and he said, if you want your marriage to survive, and I think he used the word marriage actually, that you need to get involved in some kind of 12-step group or fellowship that addresses the coupleship challenges. So I hate to say penance, but my response or the almost penalty for having a lapse was that I agreed to go to a recovering couples meeting. And it's been one of the best things that happened. So it's kind of strange, out of a behavior that I didn't want to do, it made me, the result was I had to do a different behavior. And then the new behavior is something that has really helped our relationship a lot, if that makes sense.
It was a healthy behavior.
Yeah. So it helped to replace the bad behavior with a more healthy behavior. And what I like is, I again, with the sex addiction, it's more isolation. So I wasn't familiar with I didn't know everybody else was going through the same struggle. And I was kind of, an island unto myself almost. Not even my wife was allowed to be on the island. So it was kind of strange what And I was having trouble initially just going to my own individual recovery meetings, and I thought going to a recovery meeting with my partner would just be the craziest thing in the world. So somebody had recommended like a year or two before to try out a meeting, and I was just so resistant. It was crazy. But I finally came open to the idea, and what I found was I heard guys sharing my same story, so it felt like I wasn't alone. But then I heard a perspective from women that were sharing their story, and Donna had been telling me stuff for years, but somehow I couldn't hear it through what she was saying, but I could hear it through the stories I was hearing of the women share of the betrayal and the trauma and the impact. So it's been an extremely beneficial program for us.
Yeah, and Carol, I would also have to say that, the same thing applies as to what Gary was saying, that as I was listening in the meetings, I was hearing men speak of things that Gary was. But when Gary was saying it to me, I would say, oh, that's just an excuse. See, there you go again. You're not really working your program. And I would because I was so hurt. And I really needed to see that Gary was really going to be committed to working the program, not just checking the boxes off. And as I heard other men, it like opened up my heart and my eyes to realize, oh, he's not just giving me his BS, so to speak. This really is like I'm hearing the struggles, I'm hearing the difficulty. But the other thing that what I really loved is in these groups, other couples modeled for us what it sounded like even to be a mess. And it was okay because the more we could share authentically about our issues, the more we realized that they were being embraced and understood by other couples. So it wasn't like Gary was talking about, that whole isolation. We didn't have to isolate anymore. We didn't have to we got the opportunity to let other couples speak into our lives. And we were a mess. We were really a mess, but it was okay that we were a mess. And so so at the time, the experience, the strength, and the hope of the group helped us to take one day at a time.
Well, absolutely. And, you said just a few minutes ago that this was a group that embraced you and your struggles. Now, what does that mean, Donna? Because obviously you said we were a mess. But what does it mean to be embraced by a group of people that are all dealing with the same thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's the beauty of it, really, because in so much of our day-to-day living, we pretend like everything is fine. And when there is sex addiction, betrayal trauma, it's incredibly hard to navigate those roads because there's shame that's attached for both people. And it wouldn't be something that you just talk with your neighbor about. It wouldn't be anything that you want to talk to your family about. And you're realizing, like, this is hard. Like, it feels so vulnerable to say, yes, our coupleship, probably for Gary, I'm going to think, just for you to say, yes, I struggle with sex addiction, which that's a whole part of the 12-step programs, but nevertheless in a coupleship perspective. Right. And so we were accepted for not being just fine. We're just fine. Everything's going just fine.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
And,
I mean, that's that authentic, transparent part of recovery that is part of the foundation of good sex addiction management. So, Gary, you were going to say?
Well, we were at the point of divorce, but we weren't telling anybody. But when you walk into the rooms, and it's like every couple indicated that they were at that point somewhere along the way. And it kind of helped, I won't say normalize it, but it helped us not feel so shameful about it, of failing in the coupleship and not having a marriage survive. So it was that was helpful for some crazy reason, knowing that we weren't alone in the struggle and that we could openly share, we're having challenges. We can't communicate. We don't know what's going on, was really powerful and helpful. And other couples were sharing that same story and how they got through it and how they started using some of the tools and doing the steps to get, in a better than where they were when they walked into the rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, Carol, it's so interesting because as Gary had mentioned, we were on the verge of a divorce. Because I think couples trying to navigate this hard point in their lives, we don't really know how to do it. And what happens is we trigger each other, where just Gary's presence can trigger me and vice versa because, we're both dealing with – it's interesting how probably, Gary has mentioned, and if it's okay, Gary, where you thought that I was going to throw this up in your face. Yeah, and with that, it was the shame that was speaking to you. It wasn't really me, I don't think, right? Right. But from that, we had thought that we would work the steps and then determine what we were going to do. And to be honest, Carol, I wasn't sure if Gary was really, even though he found it and it was from a lapse, I wasn't sure if he was really going to be invested in it. Started noticing is that we, when we started doing the steps, I was still really much on guard. Like, okay, is this just another one to check the box off? And but then what happened was, as we started doing the steps, like there's one that we have to do a collage of our coupleship and our higher power. Well, Gary goes out and he goes buys a frame and he's printing off pictures and he's starting to do this work. And we've never as a couple done a collage together, never. And we just started talking something, right? So we never started talking about something just like even about a collage. And we didn't even know each other really about a collage yet. At that time, when there was disclosure, we were at the 20-year mark of our marriage. Think about that, 20 years of marriage and really not knowing each other or not knowing what's really going on inside the marriage, but just trying to think we were doing marriage when we really didn't know how to do marriage anyway. But from that, it was interesting because then I started seeing Gary really work the steps. And he was embracing them, and then I started seeing changes. I heard his language change. He was sharing more openly and honestly, and I think part of that came from that modeling of other men, hearing other men speak very openly as well. Would you agree, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it helped me as well, give me language of sharing how I was even feeling, and because I was numb for quite a while, and just how Gary it just started changing us.
Well, it sounds like it was absolutely magical, and I don't want to romanticize it, but the truth of the matter is I heard Gary saying earlier that he knew that he needed newer healthy behaviors to replace the old. And certainly anybody who's been part of sex addiction understands the three circles. The inner circle being that circle that are deal-breaking behaviors, the middle circle being that circle which are slippery slope behaviors, things an addict should not be doing because it could tempt him to go into his deal-breaking behaviors. And then that third circle, which are all those outer healthy behaviors that an addict needs to be working on. And I love that this collage was a way to do something to metaphorically and through pictures share where you've been and where you want to go. And so would each of you share a couple of pictures that you put on the collage that meant something to you?
Real quick on the collage, it's supposed to be our shared vision of our higher power. That was the purpose of the collage, where we talk to each other and come up with what we agree about our higher power. So, which permeates, of course, throughout the entire steps and in our fellowship. you have the same three-legged stool can represent God and each of the partners. And so God needs to be, or the higher power needs to be throughout the process. So we started dating when we were running, doing marathons or half marathons, which is a crazy way to start a relationship. But I was thinking to have a running type collage where I took pictures of running and took some quotes and stuff related to running the race and that kind of thing. And Donna, well, I'll let her share what she picked, but I was just thinking it would be a good idea, of having a running type metaphor where we're running to each other and running to God for our help and our attachment and our comfort. But
what I wanted were outside pictures, like of nature and stuff. And as I was saying to Gary, well, what about some pictures of nature? And Gary said, what did you say to me?
I never knew she liked nature. I had no idea. I mean, I would plan trips and do national parks and stuff, and I didn't get that she enjoyed it or anything. So I was shocked or totally surprised by the pictures that she wanted to put on there, which I love, but I just didn't think she did. But it's probably the lack of communication that didn't help.
Well, it's also the lack of understanding. Carol, I grew up in a family that you weren't allowed to have fun. So you can't express, wow, this is really nice. Oh, I like doing this, because if we did, it wasn't allowed. And that's just my family of origin issues that came up. So Gary doesn't know that. He has no clue until we start doing the steps that we get to learn more and more about each other and our past of how we grew up in our own families. But it did kind of create like, well, I didn't know that you like that. And it's like, yeah, I like that. But again, this is 20 years of marriage and not knowing, some, just details about each other.
Well, not knowing, I was going to say not knowing, and also not having a support system that would encourage you to ask these kind of questions or vision these kinds of things. I mean, it sounds like this 12-step group is an opportunity to stretch out of your normal comfort zone and look at your life from a bigger place. Is that right?
Yes, but also what was so helpful for us was I had the childhood trauma of parents that weren't very, they provided the physical needs, but that was it. So I had more of an abandonment type childhood, unfortunately. But I stuffed that, and then I started relying on the addiction to provide the comfort instead of trying to deal with these emotions. But I had them buried for like 30, 40 years. Never, they were compartmentalized, stuffed away. In this fellowship and personal recovery as well was helped me to pull up some of those horrible, ugly memories and to try to work through them. And it was great to have Donna alongside me, helping me with it at the same time. So it's also looking at the past, at things that I hadn't looked at in decades, and trying to make sense of it with an adult mind instead of how I processed it as a kid and stuffed it away and then leaned on addiction to try to provide some soothing of any pain or anything. So they deal a lot with family of origin type issues initially in the steps, which was something we may have talked about at a surface level, but never really got too in deep until we started working the steps. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, so we got to find out like how our family of origins, how we grew up, of maybe how conflict was handled, how was communication handled. And from that, we got to learn a whole lot more. And when Gary said that here, we're working it together. It's not just Gary, and Gary's doing, he was doing his stuff as well, getting healthier with a counselor or a CSAT and doing his processing. But if he just does his processing in with his therapist, if you will, there's a part of me still being on the outside, so to speak. I don't know if that makes sense at all. Not that I need to manage his recovery or his healing, but what I think, and I want to use your word magical, and yet it's just part of, I think, 12-step recovery programs. What can happen is I get to find out more about Gary, meaning instead of, well, how are things in your family? Oh, okay, nothing to really report, and yet that wasn't really the case. But in Gary's story, that's what he thought it was until he started working some of the trauma and vice versa. But as we were going through the steps, I get to hear really where he came from. So it gives a much better understanding of, I think sometimes, as couples, we have this idealism of how the spouse should behave and what they should be. Because we look at Hollywood, we look at movies of just where it looks like it's just so in love and everybody is there and, it's all fixed in either 30 minutes or an hour and a half. And that's not real life. And it's literally like one day at a time, or even less sometimes. But understanding really like the not so good part of our lives and why we're here and why we were struggling, even as a couple and as individuals, to try to move forward and to try to grow even closer together.
Absolutely. And you know what I hear, Donna? I hear that you and Gary were creating a new form of intimacy, maybe an intimacy that you never had in your marriage. But when you're learning about each other in such an intimate way, it does bring you closer together. There's no way that it won't. Now, let me ask you, how do people access this 12-step group? What do they do?
Yeah, and again, we're supposed to. One of our traditions in the 12 steps is that it's based on attraction rather than promotion. But again, there is a website, Recovering Couples Anonymous .org, I guess. So that's the easiest way is that they do have a website, but they really try. Our recommendation would be just go to a meeting, and the idea is that the attraction, instead of a heavy advertising blitz, or they don't do that in our organization. So they kind of try to fly under the radar. At least that's been my experience with 12-step groups. So, but Recovering Couples Anonymous.org is just do a Google search and you'll find the international website.
Yeah, and then what happens, Carol, is of course because now with everything going on in our world, there are so many different meetings that you can go to because they're all on Zoom. And so it doesn't matter if there's no meeting even in your area. You can go to, you can go to any meeting, really, in the whole entire United States, you can go to a meeting.
Or around the world.
Or around the world, actually, yeah. I was going to say that, even around the world, because of just things being on Zoom right now. So it is incredibly accessible. And what's interesting, even as I say that, I could think of a new couple because literally, we did walk into the room. And when you walk into the room, or even when you're signing on into the room, via Zoom, there's a part of, oh my gosh, like what the heck did we get ourselves into? Like, what is this? And what happens is once you start hearing couples share, literally you feel like, oh my gosh, I am home. These people get me. They get us. So, for anyone that was kind of thinking, maybe that's not us. That's not us. That's not our personality. You may be surprised because this will probably be the first place that people would get you.
Yeah, and I respond to emails quite frequently and related to the fellowship. And what happens is, like, one partner will say, I don't have an addiction. Why would I come to those meetings? Mm-hmm. However, what they deal with is more intimacy disorder. And so if you're having trouble in your coupleship, whether there's addiction or not, all of us struggle, maybe didn't have it modeled when we were younger, or for some reason have trouble with intimacy and communication. And that's what it helps to build so it has a broader audience than just addicts, but again, there seems to be a lot of addicts in there as well. So, but again, what it's trying to help with is the intimacy challenges that couples have. if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would even say that even couples that kind of go in there, let's just say that they think there's no challenge or problem. Well, then all of a sudden they'll go to the meeting and they'll say, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I do have a problem.
Yeah, quite often what we hear is one spouse will say, I didn't need 12 steps. I didn't need any help. And then fix my partner. That's what I'm here for. And I'm only tagging along because you need to be a couple to be in this fellowship. But what they often find is, wait a minute, there may be some challenges related to intimacy that I didn't realize I had. And it helps to bridge that gap a little bit as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Well, I really do want to respect that 12-step philosophy. And I know that they don't want to advertise AA, Narcotics Anonymous, Sex Addictions Anonymous, because they don't want it to be contaminated. They don't ever want it to be commercialized, and they don't want it to be advertised in a wrong way. So I understand, Gary, that you've got to be really respectful of that. What I'm hearing you both say is that this is a place for couples to go to probably stretch out of their comfort zone, because most people are a little afraid of groups. They don't think they're going to fit in. They don't think they're going to belong. Mm-hmm. So this is a place that they can go, share their story, and know that they're around other people that understand and are willing to support them if they get healthy. Do I have that right?
Without a doubt.
And so for the person that's... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking, Carol, because, there's so many different elements to recovering from sex addiction, betrayal trauma, and this is one of those. And what is beautiful is, there's donations of, coming to the meetings if we were in the meeting, which is very affordable, but complementing that with therapy, right? Complementing that with other, like each partner doing their own work and whatever that looks like, it just adds another component to their healing process. As Gary mentioned, this focuses on the coupleship, not on the individual. And if left to our own device, Carol, I would imagine that Gary would have stayed, if you will, in his lane, and I would have stayed in my lane, because that sure seemed a lot safer to us. And that would have seemed like the normal way of how we were living anyway. And so what this did was really stretch us out of our comfort zone. And I know you kind of mentioned that, but I want to just let other listeners know that really stretched us. That was such a different change behavior for us, and it was one of the best change behaviors I think that it ever did for us, honestly.
Yeah, and I think we went from a place of just trying to heal, which crucial, absolutely required, but one to now of more growth and more, like you indicated, those outer circle behaviors. I used the red, yellow, green type traffic light thing, but those green behaviors or those outer circle behaviors, it helps put the emphasis on that instead, once you get healing, and you're never, I don't think, totally healed at any point, but once you get some kind of healing, and then you're able to look beyond yourself, kind of like what the 12th step is all about, where you're trying to help others as well. So
yeah. And what I was thinking, Carol, is, in all kind of 12-step programs, there's sponsorship program, right? So our sponsor, they helped us through it. So we weren't doing this alone. We had someone else helping us in that area, another couple that got us and understood, and, talking about intimacy there too. Like, hey, this is what happened in our marriage, and they're listening to us, and thanks for sharing. No judgment, getting a totally different response, waiting for like that response of, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what went on.
We don't want to see you anymore.
Yeah, we don't want to see you anymore. To, okay, thanks for sharing. And it was just such a different experience. So we weren't doing this alone. We can't do this alone, actually. There's no way to recover from these addiction, from the betrayal. There's just no way to do it alone in isolation. It just can't.
And with higher power or God's help too. So that helped us focus on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really I hear that, and the beauty again is both in the process of the 12-step work and the fact that you aren't alone. And when people talk about groups, they either think one of two things. They think, I am going to be way worse. My story, our story, is going to be way worse than anybody else's, or people are going to laugh at me and they're going to think our story is nothing to worry about. But you're saying, regardless of your story and your coupleship is welcome at this meeting, right?
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
And if you'd asked me my story early on, I was compartmentalizing and shoving it down and not pulling it out. So even people that initially may not seem to have much of a story, following them for a couple of months, it's like, whoa, there's, you hear more and more that gets unpacked. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but and again, there are people, if everybody could relate in an intimate way without problems, you don't need this group, but we haven't found anybody like that yet. So I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yeah. And, one of the beauties of being in group also is, like, another person's story all of a sudden reminds me of something that I buried deep inside for years. And all of a sudden it brings it to the surface, with maybe how my dad treated me or how my mom. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's me too. Oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. And it's just helping surface those wounds, that trauma maybe, what else to process. Right. And it's just a beautiful way of healing. It really is. And you know what I was thinking, Carol? I just want to, because I'm thinking, I just want to make sure I get this in, so because I may forget with just the questions that you're asking us. But I just want to say, and I'm really going to talk to the partners, whichever the partner is of the betrayed partner. Okay. If you had asked me 4 years ago if we would end up even talking to you right now or doing what we do in the meetings of, because Gary and I facilitate monthly step-up meetings for step studies, I would have told you just no way. And I also want to say, because my husband has been changing, and it's real. And I wasn't sure really about that. And I just want to say how proud I am of you, Gary, right now, just to even be on this radio show right now. And it means so much to me. That betrayed partner is wondering, okay, is this ever going to change? And yeah, it has. But if you asked me 4 years ago, I would have thought, no way. This just didn't seem possible at all. And so I'm saying that just to give other couples hope, because Gary and I are no different than any other couple. It's not like we got the secret. It's not like we haven't been through tons of pain and we just found it and it was just like, oh, this moment. It wasn't. It was so super hard, and it's been hard. But even if you think about where we are today, yeah. So, if you had said, my husband's going to be talking to Carol the coach about sex addiction, about betrayal trauma, I would have said, no, sorry, because of the shame that was attached to it, the secrecy of not letting anyone know about what was going on in our marriage, in our lives. I mean, I'm just very grateful. So I needed to get that in.
Yeah, I got to ask, it's the therapist in me and it's the coach. Gary, how did that feel for her to give you those accolades?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Not used to it. I mean, more used to it recently than in the past, but I do definitely appreciate it. And I definitely didn't have it in my family of origin. And I just want to say one way, you're going to have pain either way, and you might as well have the pain towards growth and helping yourself and others instead of the pain related to isolation and just, whatever, turtling or just going inside yourself. So there's pain either direction. And so, again, I recommend using it in a positive, constructive way where you'll grow and be a better person through it. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Patrick Carnes said it best when he said, out of great suffering comes transformation, and transformation creates growth and giving back. And that is what the two of you are doing on the show right now. That's what you're doing in your life, and that is making you healthier. So,
yeah,
I'm very happy that this is working for both of you. You're an inspiration to all of our listeners. Now, Donna, I heard you say something, and I just need a little bit of clarification because I was sitting here thinking, I have a gay couple, and they have been dying for a way to be in a support group or to be in a group, and there just doesn't seem to be enough services out there. Does
not true, Carol.
Oh,
not
yeah.
True.
Tell us about it.
Not true. Yeah, no, they are welcome. They are welcomed.
Yeah, the only criteria for Recovering Couples Anonymous is a commitment to the coupleship.
Yep.
And that's the coupleship can look anything, like anything, or any gender combinations. It's just that commitment is the only requirements for sobriety, or the only criteria for sobriety.
Yeah, and so Carol, you're thinking, oh well, then if that's the case, we have to be in a gay group only. No, it's all the same issues that affect the coupleship. It's all the same. It doesn't matter where you grew up. The color of your skin, it doesn't matter your sexual orientation. It is all the same issues that affect coupleships. Now there is.
I agree.
There's open arms. Open chairs if we were seeing in person, but that's not the case right now. Yeah, definitely. No, this encompasses every couple.
And we've known several couples of same gender, and we've been impressed, and we've taken notes because they share the same struggles we do, and we've been inspired by them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
because
very...
friendships grow out of this as well. Yeah, it's friendships that grow out of this too, and that's even, something else for us to really even understand how friendships work. And having couples that understand you as well. Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, you're an inspiration. I know that I'm probably going to get emails that say, send me to their group. I want to start out in their group.
Oh.
And I think I heard you say that you can't necessarily navigate them to your group, right? I mean, they just need to find a time and a place that works best for them in terms of, a day and a time, because it is all online right now.
Their time zone could be, more conducive of 7:30 at night, Pacific time versus 10:30, East Coast time. But there's tons of groups available.
Yeah, and they're all a little bit different. So we are part of two groups, actually. So we do want to indicate they are all just have their own
personality.
Like any 12-step group, it all has its own personality, or I hate to say flavor, but its own, dynamics going on. So if you happen to get in one that doesn't seem to fit you, try another one. And they always recommend you try at least 6 meetings, like most 12 steps, just in case you come upon a bad one or something. We've never come upon a bad one,
nope.
But again, we just caution there. If you try once and it doesn't seem to work, give it another shot with a different group, or give it another chance.
Yeah, and Carol, just so that it doesn't sound like this, magical moment, Gary and I, we went to in our CA meeting, and we actually had a huge fight. Right afterwards. On the drive home. So, and the reason why I want to say that is because, you're thinking, oh boy, this is not going to work. And Gary has one perspective of why we had a fight, and I had a whole nother perspective of why we had a fight. But we had a fight, and so, that would not have been part of the story of we go there and, we're welcomed and, everything is great. That wasn't the case with our story. We fought, right after the meeting, but we stayed with it, honestly, and I got to share with Gary how I was feeling, which was different. Normally, I stuffed it in as well, and so we talked about it, and so we went to another meeting, and so I wanted to give that story because other couples may go and they may want to expect that magical transformation on that first meeting, and I don't think that happens all the time. It could, but that may not be the case, and so I don't want to build this up as if this is the only cure, because it definitely is not, but complementing this with other really hard work of what couples have to do, it is definitely going to help move you along at a much quicker pace of that healing.
Yeah, and give emphasis to the coupleship that seems to be lacking quite frequently in individual recovery.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, no kidding. That is so true. And, I'm a big believer, and it's so important for you to have a therapist that really understands sex addiction, really understands partner betrayal, and doesn't move too quickly, because this is such a wounding that you really have to help the couple feel safe and secure. They begin their journey. And so I just love the fact that this is something they can do to supplement good work with a therapist who understands sex addiction. You guys, thank you so much for sharing today. I know you've got other things that you need to get on to, but I just really appreciate it. You've made it understandable. You've made it encouraging, and I actually think exciting. So thanks so much, Gary and Donna.
Well, Carol, thank you. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you.
All right. Make it a good one and have a great Sunday.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Couple that not only are much closer after 4 years of this kind of support, that they're giving back. And that is the beauty of this work. Could you ever see yourself getting through this, working through this, and helping others? I'm Carol the Coach, and that is what this show is all about. It's finding out what's out there for you, getting you healthy, and giving it back. And as I say at the end of every show, there will only be one of you at all times. One of you as a couple at all times if you're together. Seriously have the courage to be yourself. And we'll see you next week for more sex help with Carol the Coach.